Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is right here, everyone. Thank you for joining me for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. We are going to talk today about Scientology recruitment tactics, not recruiting people into Scientology, but recruiting people into the Sea organization. How do they do it? How does people ask the question all the time, how does anyone fall for this stuff? Well, how does anyone fall for signing up for a billion-year contract to serve a human trafficking cult for the rest of their eternity? We spoke recently with Jenny Strom, who was for a while in charge of recruitment at Bridge Publications, a major Scientology Sea Org organization. And we are back talking with Jenny about this subject today. Hello, Jenny. How's it going?
It's going all right.
For those who are not yet familiar, you can find Jenny's YouTube channel, Cults and Atheists, a search for knowledge and healing. The handle is at Cults and Atheists. Okay, so you are one of a very small number of people I can think of who has had a lot of experience on as far as your job in the Sea Org of actually recruiting other people for the Sea Org. You are very familiar with two of Scientology's most famous Sea Org recruiters, also famous for being very predatory type Sea Org recruiters. That is Gavin Potter. That is Brandon Faust. Those are the two fellows in the thumbnail of this video. Where would you like to begin this discussion on Sea Org recruitment?
I don't know. Probably first, if I recruited you, I'm sorry. I do actually truly feel bad about my participation in this activity. But I guess I'll just start from the beginning, I guess, when I was recruited by Gavin. So I'll just jump in. All right,
yeah.
You look like
so
you had a
how old
question.
were you when you were first recruited by Gavin?
I was 15.
Okay.
So yeah, he recruited myself and my friend Carly we were recruited together. We were both 15. Yeah. So
How did that go?
So Gavin had this this briefing that he had put together, and what it was like he had taken a bunch of quotes from L. Ron Hubbard from just different places, where like some were from lectures, just different forms or different issues, where LRH would kind of mention bits and pieces of things like about 1984, the George Orwell book. He talked about like the suppression of the governments, the psychiatrists, but also like these kind of one worlder type people who he says are these like financiers and governmental type people, and also just non-governmental organizations, really, and their kind of control of the government. So it's not like LRH ever sat down and did one big, huge, long lecture about it, but he would, in different lectures in different places, put pops of this information. He had actually managed to extract a whole bunch of that. And then what he did is he found things just in like newspaper articles, magazine articles, or whatever that kind of depicted these things, but also in a way kind of showed the reality of it, but probably more heavily on the whole like 1984 thing, and just like creating that one world government and the total control. And that would get into all that like conspiracy theory stuff about like, cameras everywhere, tracking every action, transaction, whatever of everyone, as well as what do you call it? I'm sorry. It looks like can you hear me still?
Yeah, I think there might be a bit of a lag. Sometimes your video slows down, but I can still hear you. Now it seems like you've paused.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, I can't hear anything you're saying right now. But every 4 seconds I hear like
somehow lost you.
There you are. Now you're back. Now I hear you. Now you're gone. This is a good time to fill up my cup. I didn't want to make all the noise while she was talking, cracking open cans and all that stuff, but now I don't mind. Jenny, you might want to back out and come back in. Here, I'll text her. Try leaving the studio and coming back in. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see. Dylan Gill is in the chat. One of my mods, my friend. This is Dylan Gill Blow Drill. I worked with Gavin Potter for a few years. He was always a double talker with that salesman smile. Here, I'll pull her off until she... Uh-oh. All right, let's see, guys. I'm going to look in the live chat for any questions or comments since we're sitting here. Allie's mom. Hey, Aaron, we know how you hate this. We'll wait. Yep. I see, like, she's there, but I don't know what's going on. That's okay. We got nowhere to be. Dear Marie, at least she froze on a good look. That's right. Let's see. Kim Wexler's ponytail. My pearls. Kim Wexler, since you are a member and you are mentioning the pearls, there should be some emojis available. Marilyn Honig sent me a bunch of emojis that she made, and I did what I think I was supposed to do to upload them in the right way and to the right place, where if you're a channel member and you go to the little icons thing, wherever you're going to send emojis, you should see some fun custom channel emojis. And one of them is my pearls. So that's why you reminded me of that. Okay, let's see. Kelly Copter, the curtains are looking much better, Mr. AA Run. Yes, thank you, Kelly. Thank you for curtain shaming me and making me aware of how dorky those looked when they were too high. So I lowered them, and I do think it looks much better. Now it makes me want to take the pallet wood and put more pallet wood over the baseboards, but I don't know that I'm quite enough motivated to make that happen. But yes, thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate it. Let's see. Escaping Falcon's Maze. Maybe just do voice if it's a bandwidth problem. Oh, yeah. I guess that's always a possibility. Actually, I have to text Jenny. Your other seems to still be logged into StreamYard. All right, we'll see. Kim is blue. Hey, Aaron, do you think Mark Bunker might be part of the new foundation? Well, I mean, Mark Bunker's not on the board of the new foundation, if that's what you mean. And maybe if he wanted to, I don't know that there's any particular reason to put him on the board of the foundation. He is very supportive of the foundation. Yeah. And also, you know, the foundation has board members, but then there's also advisory committees, and there's a lot of ways to work with and help the foundation without actually being on the board. So, but I think you're asking specifically about the board. So that's just my answer. Looking for some other one. Oh, here's Jenny. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, sorry. It's the
problem.
Struggle of living in the country.
Do you want me to pull you off until you're fully ready, or are you ready?
I'm good. Can you see me okay and everything?
Yeah.
I could turn lights on.
Seems like it. I mean, it seems fine.
Oh, that looks like prison shots.
Oh,
Okay.
Lord.
It's
Okay,
probably
good.
because I'm like
So
super nervous about this one.
that's okay. Okay, so we were talking about Gavin pulling all sorts of references that L. Ron Hubbard had made in various lectures and writings and whatnot about like 1984 or the one world government. He was he leaned pretty heavily into the one world characters working behind the scenes as like the secret shadow government of the world and things like that, right?
Yeah, like that you had these like people with tons of money and like you know, with their claws in, the like governmental people, the government and stuff, and actually trying to control it and create this sort of like big brother world, and but they would tie it into some like Freemason type stuff as well, because they would use like the dollar bill thing with all seeing eye, kind of like just this one worlder thing, because L. Ron Hubbard did kind of talk about the one worlder mentality as well. And so essentially this briefing was kind of designed to sort of like ruin somebody, like fourth dynamically, I guess.
How would you describe what that
And
means?
so I guess what it is like, um the best way I think to describe it is it's kind of, it puts you in like a mindset where like almost like some hopelessness, like we're facing like really bad situation with the world, like, and if we don't do something about it, then that's the whole like 1984 thing is sort of where we're headed, what we're gonna be living in, and if you don't want to live in that like type of a world, you need to do something about it. It kind of like brings about some guilt, especially if you kind of go, well, I don't want to be in the Sea Org, I don't want to dedicate a billion years, then you're looking at all that information, and you're just kind of like an extra a-hole, because now and now you're going to go ahead and turn your back on it, kind of thing. So you have that coupled with L. Ron Hubbard, that thing from one of the lectures where he talks about deadline Earth, and he says in 30 years, the world will not like support itself. So you just think total annihilation, right? And obviously that would have already happened, but the way they justify the sort of moving target is that, well, it's because of what Scientology is doing. The more, you know, they'll say theta, but in normal words, we'd say like maybe good vibes and this workable technology. The more we're putting that out there, the more like pro survival the general society is like starting to think with. They're starting to think in solutions and less destruction, and so that deadline Earth is moving because of Scientology. Sounds so weird when I'm saying it now, but but when you're like a Scientologist, like, this sounds like really serious stuff, and you are inclined to always believe L. Ron Hubbard, and so all of this stuff has been kind of tied together with the little things that L. Ron Hubbard does say. So, and I'll be honest, a lot of Scientologists are very into the conspiracy theories, and whatever. So it really grabs attention, but the idea ultimately would be that this briefing would sort of create that ruin, as Scientology calls it, so that you will feel the need to do something about it.
And so, did this briefing have like a name? Like, it was Gavin the creator of this type of
He's
briefing?
he's the original creator of it, as far as I understand, and was told.
Did it have a
Brandon
name?
sort of refined it, added to it, updated it, and I think he's even Gavin afterwards was put on like a sales position, so he's still using that same briefing and technology, because recruitment sales, you're really kind of trying to accomplish the same end anyways. So they would talk a lot, and I know that for a fact. And they would kind of share like articles and things that they would find to kind of keep it up to date, to keep showing that this is real, this is happening, kind of thing.
So when you say
Uh,
finding articles, you mean like some examples of pulling some current events out of the headlines and going, look, the dystopian surveillance world that L. Ron Hubbard said the shadow government was going to, set up. It's happening. And this, like that kind of stuff.
yeah. So one of the things that kind of freaked me out the most, I'm just doing this so you can see me. One of the things that like freaked me out the most too is they talked about you know, um the smart chip that's kind of in all of our credit cards, that like eventually becoming more and more thing, but then eventually they're going to turn to where they're going to start chipping us, like with actual
Mm-hmm.
like an implanted microchip. And if your whole life will be on this, your medical records, your bank accounts, all these things. So imagine if the government wants to cut you off, because
Mm.
you're not falling in line with their plan. So now you're the effect of like a suppressive government or whatever. You have to go along with their plans, or you're going to starve to death. Things like that. And I remember between that and this like 30 years, because back then we were still within the 30 that 30-year mark. So
Mm.
I remember like I wasn't really agreeing because having been raised in the daycare and the cadet org, I certainly, and having tried the EPF one time before, I just didn't excite me at all. I was trying to do the key life course so that I could go and leave and go live with my grandmother in the normal world. That was kind of my goal at that time. So I didn't want to, but then Nick was talking to me, cause Gavin and his charm and stuff wasn't really working with me. But so Nick just went in on me on that whole 30-year thing. And it's kind of like, well, what happens if we get to the end and you didn't try your hardest? Like, how will you feel? And I was like, well, obviously I'm going to feel like a piece of shit. So, that pretty much just got me. I was like, okay, well, I guess I try to avoid my inevitable fate of being in the Sea Org, and I failed. So I just need to suck it up and do it because, growing up in the daycare and everything, you sort of just have the mentality that that's where you're destined to go.
Mm.
And I was trying to escape the fate, and didn't work. So I joined, and then Carly decided she wasn't going to join. I was like, oh, I don't I don't think so. You're definitely not going to make me do this by myself. No way. So they actually ended up splitting up me and Carly because I was like getting ticked off with her because she was like talking to me about what a great purpose it was. And that's sort of how they got her to get me, was that she didn't want to be recruited. So they said, well, get us somebody else. So she went to get me. And so she thinks she's getting off the hook, but she's sitting there going, I'm saying, you can't sit there and say this is the best purpose and your purpose and then say you're not doing it. I was like, I don't think so. And so they were like, get Jenny out of there because she get mad at Carly. So they moved me out to do, I don't know, probably tests or something. And it was just Gavin and Carly, and I didn't know much about what happened until um we were on the EPF after, we had been on the EPF for a while. And neither of us were progressing that far because, well, first of all, I wasn't that excited about it. And Gavin had actually come to talk to her at one point when she was on, when we were on the EPF. And I saw her later that night, and I said, is it like kind of, is everything okay? What's up? And she goes, I'm not going to stay. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I, Gavin came and kind of like told me that I misunderstood whatever the conversation was that they had, and that he isn't planning to have like a relationship with her. That isn't there or whatever. And she said, and honestly, she said, that's why I'm here. That's what made me decide to do it. And so I understood, that was, you know, that's just not the reason to be there. And so I considered leaving at the same time because I wasn't real excited about it. But I think by then I was starting to, like I said, I kind of was just giving into the idea that there's no chance I'm going to escape this eventual existence for myself. So I was kind of
Mm,
like, I'll just stop fighting it and I'm just going to keep going, basically.
that
So I
makes
finished
sense.
EPF. Yeah.
So for
And
Carly, and I mean, my understanding is this had come up a lot with Gavin, is that he would use this briefing. Was there a name for this briefing? Did it have some
eventually it
description?
just sort of loosely was being called the ruin briefing.
The ruin briefing. So
Yeah.
as
And
a
then later
combination of
another
being like the
briefing got
world's
added, by the way.
another briefing got added.
Mm. Yeah.
So my understanding is that you have this combination of the end of the world is L. Ron Hubbard said basically the world was going to be ending. Only Scientology is delaying the predicted end of the world. How could you possibly live with yourself if the world ends and you didn't do something about it? Combined with making these young women think that he was going to have a relationship with them when they joined the Sea Org. Was Carly, was this a regular thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it happened. I don't think it was with every single person, but like, and it also just back up a little second ago, it was kind of like, yeah, you get to the end of the world, and it was like, did you do your part? It wasn't even like that. It was more like, did you do everything you could to have prevented that from occurring? Like, because you can go, well, I'm just going to be a Scientologist and I'm going to go up the bridge and go clear, and then I'll be one more person towards that goal of a cleared planet,
Mm-hmm.
but that, so they were very careful to make sure it's not about like doing the bare minimum, but are you doing the most that you could possibly be doing? And they get into the whole like thing too, where not everyone is qualified. You're one of the few. Not everyone's so aware. You're one of the few. Like that kind of creating sort of I don't know, what is it, like sort of an elite feeling, maybe, or a rarity, like a rare commodity, maybe, something like that. So I know that plays a bit into it too, because you think, well, it would be great if everyone could jump on the bandwagon, but not everyone can. So the few that can need to,
Oh, you have a greater responsibility because you're one of the few who's actually qualified.
yeah, yeah,
Now, in reality, it's hard
yeah.
to be unqualified. All you have to do is take LSD, angel dust,
Yeah,
or have massive debts. Everyone else qualifies.
yeah. Or young children. No.
No young children. No young children.
Yeah. So
Help the
yes,
people
to answer your
understand.
question. Oh, sorry.
Which question?
Oh, just the thing with Gavin. Yes, he did have that problem. Like it did continue to happen. Like
Mm.
I remember when Michelle Leclerc, was it Michelle Leclerc? I think it was her. She was totally pissed when she wasn't ended up having a relationship with him, and she bailed. She was like, I'm not staying. She goes, I was gonna be with him and we're not gonna be together, so I'm out. Another girl, Julie Taylor, I think her name was, same thing. She actually tried to hang in there for a little while. Then afterwards, she goes, she didn't really like this year schedule and everything else connected with it. But she was kind of like, and she goes, if I'm gonna be totally honest, thought it was gonna be with Gavin, so whatever. And then I know a couple other girls who thought they were gonna be in there, but they actually ended up being handled. They stuck it out and just kind of got with the whole zero purpose thing or whatever. So they got kind of sorted out. I mean, I think Gavin,
Was he
I
not
must have
a
seen him do. Hmm?
Was he not a married Sea Org member at the time? And somehow he's recruiting these girls who think they're gonna be in a relationship with him, or was he not married for a stretch?
He was not married for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he dated. Maybe I think I can't remember. But he ended up. I can't remember the sequence. I know he was married to Jennifer, and he was also married to Samantha.
Who was the girl from Dead Poets Society? They were
I don't know.
the girl he was married, the last girl he was married to, the blonde that he was married to when he was in the ship office at PAC.
Oh,
She had been an
oh,
actress. She had a small part in Dead Poets Society.
yeah. God, what was her name?
I don't know.
I forget. I actually don't remember. I know exactly who you're talking about. I don't remember the name. Escaping me.
Help the people understand how this presentation on one world shadow governments, the surveillance state, the dystopian, drugged society, psychiatry taking over to control. What the hell does this have to do with convincing somebody to join the Sea Organization?
Because that the Scientology technology is the only thing that's going to save the world. That's really what it comes down to. Like, we're supposed to clear the planet, which then sort of becomes also like unrealistic. So then it then kind of gets redefined as in, the whole like theta and theta ratio, which is really like more of the positivity, good vibes, blah, 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 versus like the bad vibes, the crime, the terrible things. And so you want to put out more of the good, and that will start to push away some of the bad. And then it kind of started being explained that way, where originally it was like, no, no, we need people to get clear. We need people at that state. And then I think that just was so unrealistic to people that it was easier to explain that even by just creating that ratio, you tip the scale, is what they would say, then we're going to be fine. And so,
Help the people
and
understand from the viewpoint of both the recruiter and the person being recruited. How is in a Scientologist's mind, in the mind of the person getting this briefing, how is them joining the Sea Org or being more dedicated or committed to Scientology or getting Scientology's tech, delivered to more people? What does that have to do with preventing the end of the world? Or how is them being convinced to do this thing supposed to equate to essentially preventing the end of the world?
though, I mean, the only way I can really explain it is just the idea that the only way the world is going to be saved is with Scientology technology. That's it. It's the only solution. So they tell you all the stuff that's going on that I already kind of explained or whatever. And in detail, I mean, they're just putting it all out, and there's images and there's articles and there's pieces of Ron's lectures and whatever. And you go, okay, good. This is the stuff we're living in, even though most of it is like covert and you don't see it. This is what's going on. But the only way we're going to stop this, we're going to get rid of the suppressive people and save the world, is if we're putting out Scientology technology. But the purpose of the Sea Org is to get ethics in on this planet. So we're going to just tackle and take care of all those suppressive people. And, also at the same time, the Sea Org is delivering technology. So not only are we handling the suppressive people, but we're now putting out the right technology. So you have it in your mind that truly this is the only solution, as long as the person kind of buys into the whole thing as they're going through it.
Yeah.
And
I was just thinking as you were talking a few minutes ago about what you just said, which is that the purpose of the Sea Org, I think a lot of people, or some people might think the purpose of the Sea Org is to clear the planet. The purpose of the Sea Org is to put in ethics on the planet. That might be a piece of knowledge that all the protesters could use to really troll those Sea Org security guards. Are you putting kind of like, hey, don't 2D flow me? It's like, hey, are you putting in ethics on the planet today? Oh, because when people hear, like, especially people who've watched a lot of Scientology content, and they go, wait, their purpose is to put in ethics on the planet? In what way are they doing that even remotely? There's nothing that even looks like that could possibly be their purpose. I'd forgotten that was the purpose until you were talking a few minutes ago.
yeah.
How did you understand it? As a Sea Org member, as a recruiter, how did you understand this? The purpose of the Sea Org is to put in ethics on the planet.
Well, after that briefing, I'm thinking we're going after these one worlders. We're going to take them out. We're going to take out psychiatry. We're going to take out all of the evils of this planet. And at the same time, we are being like, we're also the deliverers of the highest levels of Scientology. So we're going to get the ethics in, and we're going to enable people to go up the bridge to total freedom, to become these godlike spirits, you know? And so that's, you know, the way you see it, I guess. Eventually, they actually added the second briefing, which was loosely being called the whole track briefing. And what
Oh,
that was, yeah, I actually hated it so much I would never deliver it. But um people loved it because it would take same thing, you know, a lot of Ron's lectures, he's talking about like not like physical body stuff, you know what I mean? He like some of the, like I don't know, LRH tape plays every week were not my favorite thing. And I would always be like, I don't understand what he's talking about. He'd be like, well, if you want to, you know, like you as a Thetan are so powerful, like if you want a wall to be there, it can just be there or something. I'm like, not without a couple bricks and some freaking mortar. Like, what are we talking about? Like, but he would talk like that. Anyway, so this briefing takes a lot of these you know, concepts of being like super powerful. I think even the words used were like omnipotent and omniscient. You know what I mean? You're all powerful, like whatever, shiny, awesome being. And it takes like that kind of thing, but it also talks about like how long the psychiatrists have been on the whole track. You know, and the whole track is
all right.
as long as we've lived for however many lives, they call it the whole track. And so they say these psychiatrists have been there for, you know, millions and however millions of years or whatever. And so that it goes, this briefing is trying to explain that the suppression has gone on for so long. And here we are as these like incredible beings that have this technology that make us completely all powerful. And it ties it into the whole thing with the Sea Org because the motto of the Sea Org is we come back. But if you find the handwritten one from Ron, it was we've come back, and he crossed out the V and the E. And so after you've done this whole thing, you know, and you're talking about like universes and lifetimes and da 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 da, and then you get this LRH thing where he says, we've come back. You think, holy shit, I'm one of them. You know what I mean? Like it's that weird kind of thing. And you know, and it has like pictures of like the universe and then universes and then the whole galaxy and da 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 whatever. And it's just kind of like it's like the solar system and the galaxies and the universe or whatever. And it kind of does the whole thing. And it has L. Ron Hubbard quote where it's like in all the broad universe, there's no other hope for man than ourselves, or however that one goes. And
Yep.
yeah, so then you have that, and then it just leaves the people like, what, like holy moly, I need to be there kind of thing. I I have a hard time, like I always had a hard time kind of connecting with some of that whole track stuff, so I just didn't do it. If usually if there was somebody on like the project with me, I'd let them go ahead and do it, and I'd leave the room and just come back in for the closing. Because it would always kind of mess with my head a little bit where if I was listening to it, I'd feel more inclined to say, you might not believe all that, you know what I mean? So I was like, I better just move myself away and then just come back in when it was time to close the person. And so,
It's funny. I feel like it's the Scientology version of like in Star Wars when Princess Leia sends the message via R2D2, help us, Obi-Wan, you're our only chance. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, help us, Obi-Wan, you're our only chance. And that's like how Sea Org recruits are made to feel, that like they are, I want to say civilization, but civilization implies a planet. Like when you talk about galaxies and galaxies and galaxies, like Sea Org members kind of think of themselves as like the intergalactic special forces. Like they're the surgical, you know, soldiers who are dedicated to the cause and will sacrifice anything, thus the billion-year contract. Like it really is. If anyone has watched a lot of the Scientology content and has not seen the movie The Matrix, please watch the movie The Matrix, because the best way to think about what Scientologists think they're doing is unplugging all of humanity from the Matrix. And once they finish on this planet, they're going to go to the next planet and the next planet and the next planet. And instead of it being robots that are keeping civilization and humanity imprisoned, it's psychiatrists.
the psychiatrists and the world bankers and all that.
The world bankers and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers working with the aliens. And like, this is garden variety what Scientologists believe. This isn't what crazy Scientologists believe. This is what all Scientologists believe.
They use the matrix in the recruit cycle as like an example, as like the
Yeah.
example. This is what we're doing. Have you ever seen the matrix? It's exactly like that. We're waking you up and, we're going to save everybody.
So when we were talking about the subject of recruitment, you mentioned how Gavin did it, how Brandon did it, and calling in parents to ethics, recruiting minors, things like that. Where does this other sort of enforcement mechanisms come into play in the recruitment cycle?
Okay. So I wasn't like obviously always on recruit lines, so I can like I guess just from my experience, kind of where things were sort of setting in and stuff. So Brandon gets trained by Gavin and gets trained on the briefing and and how to do it and like how you're supposed to interact with the person. And they, between the recruiters and what they call the regs, the salesmen, there are very specific pieces of L. Ron Hubbard policy that you're supposed to use. And it's all about like getting the person through their resistance to the point where they're going to be willing to do it. And they call it the DEI scale. It's like desire, enforce, inhibit. And at the point where they say, at the point where the person's really pushing back, like, no, 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 stop talking to me. I don't want to deal with this. Like, get away from me, get out of my house. Like, any other person ever get to that point in sales cycle, like sales situation, in the real world, that's like you're harassing the person. But L. Ron Hubbard says when they're at that point, they are basically just about to say yes. That's the final step of, but he says it's the person's own bank or whatever that's kind of preventing them from doing something so pro survival. So
Yeah.
you just have to care enough about them to get them through all of your harassment and get them to say yes, which is usually a point where maybe half the people just give up. But more on the sales side with the recruitment, they've just been love bombed enough to think that they're like, a superhero. And yeah, so you have that one. You have obviously the tone scale gets used, but also a book that would be used all the time was called Big League Sales or Surefire Sales Closing Techniques. It just was renamed at some point, but it lists buyer types. And so depending on what buyer type the person is, you sort of like work your close with that attitude. Like, so for example, the big one probably is the unattached female. It's probably not the the only one, but like that was a common one. So you have the unattached female, and he, Les Dane, the author, basically kind of he kind of says I don't even remember the exact wording or really, but it's more or less that you kind of like put yourself there as like an authoritative type person, but with like charm, and they want to be made to feel special and like kind of stuff like that, which got taken to mean like flirty and whatever.
I wonder how many
Yeah.
people are familiar with this this book, written by Les Dane, called Big League Sales, or like you said, it had either a new title or a subtitle of Surefire Sales Closing Techniques.
Yeah, that's it. It was just, I think it was originally called Big League Sales, and I think with one of the republishing, it just was Surefire Sales Closing Techniques. I actually was trying to find it before this thing because I actually got a copy of it, and I wanted to have it, but anyways, I don't know where I put it. It's somewhere.
One of the reasons the book is so rare and hard to get is because it is the Bible for all Scientology recruiters and fundraisers. And Scientologists snap up all the copies they can find, and the book's not in print anymore. So this book costs like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you can find it usually. And I remember in the book, it talks about that basically everyone's a buyer. Well, I think you still have to qualify your buyer, and they're wearing a brick overcoat of resistance, and you have to break through their brick overcoat of resistance. And there's all sorts of exercises and drills that recruiters and fundraisers do to practice identifying which buyer type the person in front of you is. And it certainly seemed like a lot of these Sea Org recruiters, their favorite buyer type was the unattached female. And that's where you get the Gavin Potters and the Brandon Fausts of the world, where their specialty is going after underage Scientology girls. And I don't know, maybe it was just their I don't know, maybe they just thought that was their favorite buyer type for what I mean, I don't know. You could explain it a dozen different ways. But it didn't get to a point where it seemed like the only people these guys would recruit is young underage Scientology girls.
It would seem that way. I mean, I know for a fact that they did recruit males, but it was like if you were to kind of do a ratio, a lot more girls than there were boys. But yeah, some of that got like kind of nipped in the bud, and so they started putting more effort into, you know, diversifying their recruits. So yeah, with many ethics handlings, they were like, okay, I better start, focusing on
Funny
some
little
other
anecdote,
people.
real quick. Funny little anecdote. Did you ever know Ken Harris? He was a cramming officer at Flag. I think he was at PAC later at Ash Show. He was in Qual at Ash Show Day, and he had some condition with his hip later on in life where he walked with a very noticeable. It almost looked like one of his legs was shorter than the other, even though it wasn't. Do you remember a guy walking around PAC base like that? Kind of
I
a
only
British
remember
Australian.
Tyler. Oh no, I
Tyler.
don't.
Oh, I know you. Okay. So the reason I'm mentioning Ken Harris, he was the cramming officer at Flag, and he was tasked with basically training, putting on a training seminar for all the fundraisers and the recruiters. And they brought Les Dane. They hired Les Dane to do the training seminar with all the people at Flag. But because L. Ron Hubbard had endorsed his book has basically become sanctioned as like Scientology tech, right?
Yeah.
But as you know, Scientology tech is not supposed to be alterable. So they hired Les Dane to come and teach this seminar based on the book, but Les had already like advanced his methods, and his new books had different information. And so Les was just trying to teach his info, and Ken had to pull Les aside and cram Les on his own book.
Hey, did he buy into that? Like, this just sounds weird.
Les was just there to take a paycheck and do what they told him to do. And so because in retrospect, it's not that L. Ron Hubbard endorsed Les Dane himself. He endorsed Les Dane's book. So Les Dane was only allowed to teach exactly what was in his book and nothing else. Ken told me this story one time when I was like, oh my God, you crammed Les Dane on his own freaking book. That is unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. That's really weird. Actually, but just about the thing, my understanding actually with big league sales or surefire closing to whatever. Anyways, everyone calls it big league sales. So my understanding is actually, if I remember this correctly from when I was at Bridge, an SP got a hold of the copyrights on it, and they are refusing to sell it or turn it over or reprint it. They're the ones intentionally not reprinting it because Scientology wants it. It was a big thing when I was there at Bridge, and I think that's what I understood of the whole situation.
Wow, I wonder if that's true, because obviously Scientology would love to buy up the copyright on that book if they could.
Because we were trying to find any bookstores, distributors, anyone who still had some and buy them so that we could sell them. And we would find like some place had a box of 25, someone else had 10 of them, and someone else had, and we were trying to buy them all up in order to be able to, sell them to the Scientologists and Sea Org and stuff like that. But eventually we stopped being able to find them.
Wow,
and the guy wouldn't sell.
Interesting.
He wouldn't turn over the copyrights or sell them or anything. He was just
So
like,
tell me
"Fuck
how
you."
it worked. You mentioned before calling parents into ethics to handle them when their minor children are being recruited. How did that work?
Anyway, so this is Brandon, I think, was the worst with on recruiting young people. Like Gavin recruited young people, but Brandon recruited younger people. And that would be a constant fight between like legal, me, and Brandon. Because like Brandon is like fast flow recruitment. I should be able to get whatever. And these people are, so aware and amazing. And I'm like, they're 12. No, and the legal officer would be like, don't dare do that. We're going to have a problem with the schooling. And, so it would just be this constant fight. And so Brandon hated me. Actually, he wrote a 4-page KR on me, how I fit every single suppressive person trait, like a paragraph per quality to explain what an evil person I am. And all the while, I'm taking bullets for this guy because he can't stop flirting with people while he's married. He can't stop, looking at porn and jerking off to porn in his car and
What?
other
My
things,
pearls,
that we're
what?
not supposed to do. And yeah, and here's the thing, like, I never had an issue with people like jerking off or whatever. I thought that was kind of a stupid thing to get into. So like, the minute he's not doing great, everyone's like, oh, Brandon is off the rails. And they take every little thing he's done and he's just like whatever. And I'm like, okay, everyone just like calm down. And so what it was like for pretty much everyone who worked for me, if it was not very logical to me or just was like real petty, I would just take the hit instead and get in trouble for my mutual outrudes and just like keep it off of keep it off of them, because why should they, you know what I mean? It just is so petty and stupid. So I did that a lot. And in the meantime, apparently, I'm an SP, but then not only that, we're going out to like recruit cycles sometimes. A lot of times I was kept on personnel. For a long time, I was just mainly on personnel lines. They call lines, whatever. Working on personnel stuff. And every now and again, this is how Brandon is. He's like a little troll of a man, but he's all, Jenny, it wouldn't hurt if you would just maybe put a little makeup on. I'm like, motherfucker, I just got comment for you, so how about you just shut up, okay? And let's go.
He's like the Ron Burgundy of the Sea Org. He's like, maybe don't wear a bra next time. Put on a little bit of makeup. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so funny.
I'm trying to
very high opinion of
imagine.
himself, though.
He's a very little man.
He is very little
I'm
man.
trying to imagine the weekly shitstorm of like messengers storming into HCO at the end of the week when there's no recruits and being like, Brandon didn't recruit anyone again. Is he jerking off again? Get an ethics officer in here and get to the bottom of it. Is Brandon jerking off again? This is why he can't recruit anyone. His ethics are out. If he would only stop jerking it. They're so obsessed with this stuff.
They are so obsessed. It's like ridiculous. So the only thing I ever got mad at him for is, because we're not allowed to access the internet. That's like a big fat whopping no. And he did that so he could watch porn. So I got on him about that because it's not okay to access the internet or whatever. And then, but if it was about him, like, slapping the salami, I'm just kind of, it just is not. It's just, I don't know. It just seems stupid. And so, but, then, he was married. And so then he would come up that he's sitting there like flirting with these girls and really kind of, giving them a little hope or something. So yeah, he get kind of in trouble for that stuff too. But, whatever. At one point like we were having to get him corrected because it was, this whole flirting thing was coming up too much. And he said that was part of what he learned from Gavin. And he really thought that was the only way this could happen. It was the only way he was going to get these recruits. Like he thought without that like little charm factor, it wasn't going to work. And so finally we got that pounded out of him. So he would stop doing that. And he did start recruiting boys and stuff, but he kept hanging on the minor side, like the minors thing. And so we put in a rule, like if they're 14 and under, it's just no. And then he was very unhappy about that. And then whatever. So, but with some attention, he could recruit people who were a bit older, but then he would default back again and start going younger and younger. He's just, he was a difficult person. Like, I don't know what else to say. It was just very difficult. And he was not nice unless he's like recruiting you. He can be quite a mean person. But
so when he wrote this giant report detailing in painful detail how you are a 2.5% or dangerous SP, were you his senior at the time?
Sure was. I was his ugly senior. His very not good looking senior.
It wouldn't kill you to put on some makeup, Jenny. Jeez.
Yeah.
For our sake, my God.
I know, right?
Imagine being a Sea Org recruiter in the largest Scientology market in the world, and you're just pissed off that you're not allowed to recruit anyone under the age of 14. 14 years old. That what year would this have been around, roughly?
Yeah, I think he even wrote me up at that time for like suppression on Scientology. It's like, get over yourself. And so
what year would this have been, even roughly?
okay, let me think. So I don't remember. So if I left in 09, I'd been it for 11 years. So I guess like 1999, 1998 to till the time I left. That was about the time that I was, his senior. And he was recruiting long before that. I just wasn't involved. And then not long, but sometime before that. And then eventually I became his senior. And then eventually I had to bounce between the personnel and the recruitment. So I got, sent out a couple times to do some tours and recruit some people or whatever. And then I come back and be personnel. And then Brandon would get mad at me for that too. Like that was another thing. He would just be pissed off. Like, you're the has, you should be recruiting, you're not doing personnel. And I'm like says the person who does not understand like what all is going on, like here I am doing daily reports to COB every night. And he's like, you should be doing what I tell you. Oh, okay. Junior of my junior. Sure. Let me get right on that.
So you're differentiating between recruiting brand new Sea Org members and handling personnel assignments and reassignments of existing Sea Org members.
Yeah.
When you say personnel, you mean all the person. I'm sorry, I think our lag is getting maybe a little worse. When you say personnel, you mean all personnel related issues other than recruiting brand new Sea Org members.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I had a person who would do a lot of that, but I was working very specifically on people going into our manufacturing plant. So internal stuff, the director of routing and personnel she was taking care of that, and she was working with me on the manufacturing stuff. And if I was involved, it was manufacturing related because of the intensity.
Okay. So you mentioned that Gavin had kind of a reputation for recruiting young people. But Brandon had a reputation for young, pretty people, and Brandon would go after even younger, pretty people. What was the concern? Was there ever any particular concern expressed by not just you, but even the recruitment? Because there's there's like a particular organization in PAC responsible for personnel overall, senior HCO, and then there's senior HCO. And I know these guys had a reputation for being great recruiters, but was there pressure coming down of like, hey, you've got to stop? Other than you said you had a problem with it, you've got to stop either just recruiting kids or you've got to stop just going after women. Like, how did their seniors view what they were doing?
So the first thing that was always in their mind that they would try to, I guess, make everything okay with was fast flow recruitment. You need to just bring them in. You need people. And they were like, young people are good for TTC, the technical training core. That's like where they just go into training to be auditors, supervisors. Or they, and then they use the excuse, well, these young people aren't like burdened down with debts and children and mortgages and stuff like that. And so, but it would just be a constant fight with legal, because legal would be like, you're not sending them to school. This is a problem for us. So if you either fix the stuff with the schooling and you start actually sending them, which most orgs didn't want to do because they want them working. And they say, so you either fix that or you got to put like an age cap. And so it was like one of these things that would go back and forth. So for a while it would go in where you can't recruit, it has to be 16 and up. And then that's considered like kind of like suppression on recruit lines. And so then they
Oh,
go
right, of
back
course.
younger. And then Osa
I
wins the
see.
battle again. And then it goes back young, so it's always a back and forth thing.
The last that you can recall, like when you left,
Mhm.
what was the restrictions or guidelines in place on recruitment as far as age, how young could they take them? Were they allowed to recruit kids that were still going to school? Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yes, definitely. I wasn't very good at it because like I always felt funny talking to like little kids. It just seemed very weird. I think I did recruit a couple that were like 16 maybe, and even that was a bit awkward. What I mostly got used for was to go to the class 5 orgs. Like if there was someone there who wanted to join the Sea Org, I would go recruit people to be staff, and then I'd spring that person and bring them bridge. So I got used for, I got used for that a lot. But as a general thing, yeah, there was, as far as I remember, there wasn't really an age limit or cap or anything on that.
I have a story for you.
Okay.
At one point at ASHO, when John Lundeen, like I was really a pain in John Lundeen's butt, and he realized that he could kill two birds with one stone if he would send me out on recruit tours, which was, for me, I love traveling, and in the Sea Org, even getting on a plane anywhere feels like a vacation, even if you're going on a tour. But I am the worst salesperson ever, and I consider recruitment to be sales. And I never recruited in Scientology, and I never sold in Scientology. But for me, it was like a Sea Org vacation. So me and Valentino Buonacore, remember Val?
Yeah. Yeah.
Me and Valentino were sent to Denver to recruit people. And we managed to get this one youngish Scientologist, Steve Latino. And we managed to get the org to convince them to let us have like his ethics folders and his PC folders, and to bring these things with us to LA so that he could get approval to be on the EPF. And somehow we left this guy's PC folders in the rental car, and the rental car company threw them all away.
Oh shit.
And so
Oh my
Steve
God. It's
Latino,
like you have to be in staff or a Sea Org to know just how bad that is. Oh,
his PC folders just don't exist anymore.
I can't believe you didn't get like everything declared or something. Holy shit.
If I, luckily in this situation, I was the tech sec. I had no business being on a recruit tour. Valentino was actually an HCO staff member, and in my opinion, had a little bit more of the responsibility for the actual personnel side of this thing. And it was crazy because it's kind of like Valentino was like blaming me for leaving the PC folders in the car. And I'm like, that was not that was like, I was sort of blaming him. And I guess what I'm saying is, if I had been an HCO staff member, I probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble but for some reason, like, it's not my job to recruit people. I'm freaking tech sec. It's like had nothing to do with me. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was some of my, and I even went out with Russell Fisher on some recruit tours.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about him. That's right. Yeah.
To Denver. We spent a lot of time in Denver, and there was two staff members there who ended up joining the Sea Org, Whitney Gronseth, and I forget, she was the Has Denver, and then her Dur-INR, she ended up working in the CTO under Jono. I totally forget her name right now. She was a very small blonde girl, but I forget her name. For some reason, John Lundeen realized, my life would be easier if I get Aaron out of the org as often as possible. Russell Fisher was a weird guy to be out on recruit tour with.
That's funny. That's weird.
Yeah.
So you and John Lundeen weren't like besties.
No, me and John Lundeen were not besties.
Okay, we were talking about the parents thing.
Yes.
So yeah. Actually, the reason I even brought this up to you to do is because I've actually had a few requests from people, actually since our last video, where they were like, will somebody please talk about the recruitment? Will you please talk about like kind of all, whatever angles. So hopefully for y'all listening, we're doing that, but whatever, feel free to ask questions. Actually, I can't see your questions. I'm sorry. But so with the parents of minors, so if a person's a minor, you have to get parental consent. and they have to sign a power of attorney so that somebody within the Sea Org can also like take them to a doctor if needed or whatever. And so, needless to say, a lot of parents were not excited about their young child going into the Sea Org. That was
Yeah.
very common. I mean, every now and again, you have parents that are trying to push their kids in because I guess they, I don't know why. Anyways, but most of them were like, absolutely not like sending my kid there. I want them to finish school and I want them to go to college and I want them to whatever. And so, I know for sure I was sent a few times to go deal with the parents. Um, because, as it was stated, that my suppressive existence was still better at dealing with older people than Brandon, the amazing human, was at. He couldn't talk to older people, I guess. Anyways, so I would go and try to just talk to them about it. And in my case, a lot of times it was just listening to them and understanding their perspective on it. And I guess I'm trying to think like what things I would say, and I don't really remember a lot, but probably just letting them know that we'll make sure their kid is okay, and that there was a Sea Org school time. Jesse Reese used to um, run it. He was like a teacher, and for a while there, he was actually pretty like hardcore about making them attend. So we had that going on, and then trying to think, like, I don't know, a lot of times from what I remember, a lot of times I think I just listened to them, and just let them talk, and didn't make them feel terrible for not wanting their kid to go. Like I guess on some level I could just I could understand that, and seemed like it worked. But I was talking to a lady the other day and she told me what happened. She reminded me of another thing that does happen, and that is like when the parents are just like outright refusing and not going to do it or whatever. Like the recruiter will write a KR on them and send it to whatever org their online's at, and then that ethics department will call them in for like metered ethics interviews or to read policies or basically be handled. And so I definitely was aware of that happening, that they're being called in. I never sat in on like any of the ethics cycles themselves, but I do know that that was going on. And this one lady actually told me, I had no idea it went this far, but she had a physical condition, so she was kind of like, yeah, I'm not coming in. And they told her that she would get declared if she didn't. Like, for a Scientologist, that is a big, big deal. Like, you're going to take away Scientology from them altogether. That the excommunication is going to go in there, family, friends, work. Like, that's like, that's a whole nother level, I think. But apparently so I'm guessing she wasn't the only one who got something like that. Um, and I know also too, for part of the recruitment cycles, we started doing this and I did partake in this, but like, you do the whole like briefing with the people, and if they're not budging, you get them like to spit out some like out points or something, and then you write them up, and then they get like a metered ethics interview and kind of pull any little dirty secrets they're holding on to, and then like have them do a little ethics program. Those were usually pretty light touch, but just it was almost like another excuse for sort of keeping them coming in, keeping them coming around, so that way the recruitment thing is still going. So it was never real hardcore or whatever. And Brandon used to have me do that a lot with the people. Um, which I always had to kind of run in and out of because I was under the gun on the other stuff. But yeah, like so maybe just do a study program with them and help them with some like word clearing stuff or something. And like a lot of times, what I would do instead, I mean, he always thought I was doing ethics programs with them, but more I was a lot of times I'm just this random person now because I'm not the one who is sitting there recruiting them. I've just talk to them. Hey, well, what are you thinking? How are you feeling about everything? Kind of like what's going through your head, and I'm not their recruiter, so I think it often just sort of opened them up. And you know sometimes they would just say like, oh yeah, I'm actually like this close. I just don't want to say yes to him. You know what I mean? Or something like that, and so whatever. So I did partake in that end of things. And then eventually, like I said, well, Brandon wanted to be in senior HCO, which honestly was fine with me. Like for me to stop getting in trouble for him, who would always treat me like crap, even though I was getting in trouble for him all the time, I was like, by all means, get replaced and go. I'm like, go ahead. And so they gave me a girl who had never recruited anything. She was super nice. She just had never ever recruited. I was like, fine, Brennan, just teach her what to do and we're good. I like her. She's nice and whatever. And so then Brennan decided, and so did senior HCO. Sheree asked Regard if you remember her. Sheree, she's like kind of manic, crazy little girl. But anyways, they had him go anyways without doing a turnover, but he promised that he would still do it because I was so tied up in the personnel thing. And then that didn't happen. So then I had to go train her or whatever. And then from then on, I ended up, she just wasn't a great recruiter. So I just ended up becoming the recruiter. And then they were trying to, while I was on a tour, actually, my director of personnel decided that she wanted to get involved in a personnel cycle to become my senior. This is while I'm gone, and take the recruiter and have that person be the director of personnel. So then I would actually not even have a recruiter. And I think what they wanted to do was have me be the recruiter. I don't know how they had this whole thing. And I was like, what are you guys doing? I said, I said, I'm not there. And you're literally taking everything apart. What are you doing? And
So the Durap was trying to become the supercargo?
yeah, yeah. While I was out
Hmm.
of town, and they waited until I was out of town, they actually did a personnel CSW that I would not have to sign off on, because I have to sign off on all of them unless I'm physically not there. So they waited until I went on tour, did the CSW, put it through, so that while I was out, she became my senior, and I was out a person.
And the
And I
CO was okay
literally,
with all that?
they had already busted the CO.
Oh, so Liz was already busted.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Interesting.
they did that. They did her thing also was a real shady thing. It was done in a real skeevy way. The way they did her too was pretty crappy.
Wow.
I'm not
That's funny
saying she
because she
was
ended
like
up
the
being
angel of the universe, but huh?
but she ended up being Cherie Bloomfield's mother-in-law when Cherie married Sepp, right?
Yeah.
Cherie could be a whole other conversation. She ended up being one of the main fundraisers committing all the credit card fraud at the LA org.
It doesn't surprise me, like not even in the littlest bit.
Yeah.
She likes to think of herself as this like super dynamite, gung ho, go getter, and she has that constant fake enthusiasm, just goes and goes and goes. And but she doesn't think with like consequences. And like, she's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Do you know what I mean? So,
Oh, I know. She was
so
at Asho
sometimes,
Foundation. She was at Asho Foundation when I got to Asho Day. And I there's something about her level or type of ignorance that allows her to be very, very good at least what she's setting her sights on. Because it's almost like, and this is going to sound really, really derogatory, but it's almost like she's too dumb to understand all the reasons why what she's trying to do isn't going to work. And therefore, her ignorance actually sometimes allows her to make things happen.
mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. It's true. Like that's exactly what I meant, but she doesn't think in consequences. So she's not looking at everything that is applicable to that situation, but she just tenaciously, like the Tasmanian devil, just goes at something. And it's like, woo! And then she does it, and then it's like, oh, this part was off policy. Oh, the parents are about to sue us. Oh, you know what I mean? All these things happen, and she's be like, oh, okay, well, we can just fix that. We can just fix that. We can just fix it. It's like, you like literally like created a huge dumpster fire. You're not going to put it out with your shoe. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of like her mentality. And so yes, it could be because you can get everyone all like hyped up, except for me, because I would just look at her like she was nuts. But I did my best to kind of keep everything kind of
Well,
cool with her,
in some
because
way, was
like
she not sort of a female um, Gavin
twin
Potter? I mean,
topper.
she had some assets to put to use in a recruitment interview. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Oh, okay. That's a whole nother thing. Okay, so in the recruitment thing, when you're going after like a male person, they would actually try to use that same unattached female thing towards the
Mhm.
dudes. Like,
And that's where Cherie came into play.
mhm, exactly. But because I remember Gavin was trying to get me that. He's like, just be a little more this. I'm like, holy shit, shut up. Like, I don't exude that stuff. I don't have that in me. I'm just who I am. And I can't be all like, I don't know. I just don't have that thing in me. I just, whatever. I can't do it. It's just weird. I can't do it. And so I'm not gonna be like, oh, charmy and shit.
It's
Like,
funny though,
no.
there really are mentally I'm thinking of a divide between fundraisers and recruiters who are actually just really good at their craft as salespeople. And I'm thinking like a Ruthie Disher. Ruthie Disher was an amazing
Hmm.
fundraiser and she was physically repulsive to look at. So meaning, and I'm only mentioning that because it's not like all recruiters and all fundraisers are just honeypotting everyone. Like Cherie
Right.
Bloomfield's just a straight honeypot. Gavin
Mhm.
Potter and Brendan Faust, kind of a mixture of sales skills and honeypotting. But then you've got like old school OG recruiters and fundraisers that somehow were amazing at their job, but didn't do any of that weird sexualization, honeypotting type stuff.
Right. Like Gretchen, Enid, those people were very just,
Schwartz, even Schwartz, right? Louis Schwartz or whatever. Um,
yeah.
even I don't know. It did seem at AOLA, even the registrars, they started putting young, somewhat attractive young girls on posts as registrars. And I'm like, how can you have a 22-year-old, I say girl, but an adult woman. How can you have a 22-year-old a young person who's never even done the OT levels and they're the chief fundraiser for the advanced org? Like there was a lot of things that didn't make sense to me. It seemed like there was an emphasis on just trying to put young, attractive people on the recruit posts and on the fundraiser posts. But it seemed like it hadn't always been that way. But for some reason, there was this shift. I don't know if that's true. That's just kind of how I saw it.
Well, I do know that one of the things that they try to do, I mean, you had your OG Regs, right? Like you're saying, Disher or whatever, that are so good at what they did, without needing all that, whatever. And so they're going to remain. But yeah, like when they go to put people on, you have that policy on the PE, what's it called? PE and registration personnel, personal efficiency and registration personnel. And it's a
Mhm.
policy about who is qualified for that type of a function. And L. Ron Hubbard lists out different things. And in there, I think it does talk about being personable and like presentable. So I think that's probably what you like saw, and what they were trying to put, you know.
Yeah. And in Cherie's case, it seemed to work. I mean, did Brendan Brendan and Gavin was always on some recruit or sales post.
Yeah.
And did Brendan also get put on a sales post like later on after his recruit posts or no?
I think he was a recruiter till the end, because I think what
Mm.
happened was, my understanding, yeah, like, because my understanding is how he ended up out was like one of the flag recruiters was in pack for, I think, recruiting people, obviously, or whatever, get people to flag, and senior HCO has to assist with things like that, when whatever, and so I guess they ended up falling for each other or something like that. And I think they went out to eat or
Scandalous.
something. I know. And so then they decided to leave and left together or something or other. I don't know, something, whatever. I don't
They took
remember.
out two recruiters with one stone. Oh my God, management must have been furious.
A stone, maybe a
You
rod.
know, two recruiters with one bone. You know what I'm saying? Um, we haven't even talked about Quinn Toffer, who
Oh my
was
God.
he's
He is the
such a
male
weird.
version of Cherie.
Is he really? I mean, he was always a
Here,
good-looking,
look at him.
energetic dude,
He's
but
dim-witted, somewhat good looking. Just kind of go and 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 go after that one thing without thinking about anything else. And he was a good reg.
for most of my time in the Sea Org, for some reason, Quinn Toffer was the MLO CTO. And he would go around telling everyone to not miss their meals and to get in their exercise time. And I'm like, this is the most worthless use of a Sea Org member ever.
Quinn
And
was like the cat with 19 lives. He
yeah,
was a sticky fingers person, taking money all the time. And
stealing
he
from
had
where?
an out to eat from people, places. He went out to eat, and this guy, I'm telling you, he had like more than 9 lives. Every time I thought for sure he's getting kicked out this time. Oh my God, he's gonna get beached. Oh my God, he's gonna get canned. And never. He always managed to like not. And then eventually he went from the MLO to becoming Ideal Org fundraiser.
I have not heard Quinn's name mentioned yet in the people that I've spoken with about all the the fraudulent fundraising. But
Mm.
my understanding is all the fundraisers were engaging in this fraud. And the reason it's been so long since I've thought of Quinn is I just haven't heard his name come up.
Apparently he does grounds now.
He's a landscaper
That's what I was told.
at PAC. Oh, I hope so. I want the protesters to catch Quinn on like trimming some shrubs or something like this. The fact, if he is a landscaper, it would be because he got busted off of one of these fundraising positions, because he was one of the lead Ideal Org fundraisers for the West US.
Yeah, he was.
There were so many Toffers. The first Toffer that I knew was Jack Toffer, because he was training at Flag when I was there. And then when I got to the Sea Org, there was a Simon Toffer. So there's Jack, Simon, Quinn, and I know I'm missing one.
They had a sister, I think. Did they?
I don't
Nicole,
know.
my junior married him.
Oh,
would lie
Nicole
to her.
Toffer. Was she the Durap? Was Nicole the Durap?
Yes. Yeah, she was the
Oh,
one
that's
who
right.
like
She
kicked the
was
pegs out
married
from
to.
under me while I was out of there.
That's right. She married Quinn. You know, it's funny. All you people at Bridge, like the entire 4 years I was in the Sea Org, I know for sure you and I never spoke one word to each other. And yet I know all these Bridge folks just from seeing you all every week at base briefing and at CTO for like roll call and stuff. It's this weird culture. Like I never spoke a word to any of you guys ever, but I knew who you were. I'm sure you knew who I was. It's this weird culture, especially with different echelon organizations.
Yeah, it's you get like they're real good at like compartmentalizing, so like you can, or like maybe that's the wrong word, but like sort of segregating, like even within the organization itself. So something could be happening in my very own org, and I may not even know about it or know very, very little about it because they won't want me involved in it because they need me focused on something else. So you have like CMO or whatever be like, don't distract her. We need her tunnel vision. So something else could be going on over here. And I may hear of it, but not, it's weird. Like that happens all the time in this organization. So even from org to org or within the orgs themselves.
That's certainly true. Well, one thing, let me ask you specifically, because there's what Gavin did and how he did it. There's what Brandon did and how he did it. And so Brandon's out of the Sea Org now, but Gavin is still in the Sea Org to the best of my knowledge.
I imagine that Gavin will be in there until like he's forced out. I don't think Gavin is gonna walk out of there. He is, he's not just drinking the Kool-Aid, he is made of the Kool-Aid.
Oh, check this out. That's right. It was Alex Potter was his wife.
Oh yeah. And she was actually a nice girl when I met her.
So apparently in the movie Dead Poets Society, her character is Matt Damon's girlfriend. And I haven't seen the movie since I was told that, so I can't swear to it. But on IMDb, she's Alex Powers. And it says she became a Scientologist in the 90s. Gavin Potter, da-da-da-da-da. That's right. I think Alex essentially was being driven into bankruptcy by all of the money she had been regged for, and the solution was to join the Sea Org, and somehow that made sense to someone. Okay, so but when you had to step in eventually and do the recruiting yourself, what did you find to be the most effective way to recruit someone into the Sea Org?
I would say, so I did more, actually, maybe 50-50. I did staff recruitment and SEER recruitment, maybe 50-50. But I think it's one of these things too. I know I'm just like thinking, because it's one of these things where I hated it so much, like hated having been a part of it so much that like I think I just mentally try to block it. But if I I would say using that first briefing as an interest point, something to kind of drive some interest, kind of keep them around. And honestly, I was absolutely mind boggled by how many Scientologists are super into that stuff. Like they'll come back, they'll call me, be like, "Hey, I just saw something else. Oh, you know what?" And I'm just like, "Oh, holy smokes!" Like it would happen all the time. The people I was recruiting, both for staff and serve, would be like texting me or calling me with like other things they'd seen or heard or whatever. So that was a high interest thing, and I think the biggest thing was how much I believed that we needed people in order to clear the planet. And so I like would a lot just talk to the people, and I would tell them how much we needed them, and especially if they were qualified, it's kind of like you're qualified, we could, we really need your help. And just I guess you just people have different objections, things they want to accomplish. And I think I was just very careful never make them feel bad about the things that they were trying to do or wanted to do. And like I would even say there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we don't have a lot of time, and so this is our, as Ellert said, a brief breath in eternity. And I believed that. So it was kind of like I would never make them feel bad for their other goals. I'd be like, it's, I just, and I think sometimes that helped because I think a lot of regs and recruiters would be like, that's so off purpose. And like, Sea Org, having a family, or like Sea Org, becoming a lawyer, and it's just kind of where I was a little bit more like, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I think that's a good worthy goal if we didn't have this situation that we're trying to deal with. You know, I think that was pretty much my angle. And the briefing was just a way to kind of get them to be around, come around, create some interest. And I found more people, like the younger people would be more like, oh my God. And the older people are more into like, oh, I've seen that. I know this. Oh, let me show you something. You know what I mean? And it just creates conversation. I think I enjoyed working with older people more. I just felt like we were having um, just more back and forth. There's banter, kind of whatever.
If you had to estimate how many people you recruited for Class 5 staff and how many people you recruited for the Sea Org, what would you say?
I don't even know. I got my last couple years there, like super foggy, super blurry. I'm telling you, when I was recruiting in DC, this is how like out of it I was. I don't even know how I was getting it done, as out of it as I was. I got into a conversation with one of the guys I was working on recruiting. We got some conversation about the Rolling Stones. I recorded him in my phone as Keith Richards. Forgot all about it. And he calls me back to schedule the appointment. And it says, Keith Richards is calling. I could not remember who it was or that I had even put that in my phone. Like, I was so out of it. I honestly don't even remember how many people I recruited. I know that when I left DC, I had recruited 6 staff members. I know in Boston, I think I recruited 11. I think in Canada, I signed 8 for the Sea Org, arrived 4 of them maybe. I think I got 2 two people for the Sea Org out of Boston, one from DC. I actually think I might have recruited someone else in DC, and I just can't remember. I recruited somebody from Albuquerque. Couldn't even tell you their name. I don't even remember the name of who I recruited. Like it's that. I don't know. It got that bad for me. So I don't even know. I should know, but
So,
I
but
don't
more
know.
than, let's say more than, less than. If you had to estimate, how many
Okay.
class 5 staff members you probably recruited? More than, just estimate.
Okay. I don't know. 25, 30, maybe something like that.
And for the Sea Org?
20.
Okay.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
Something like that,
Oh, I
maybe.
just remember the name of the other girl from Albuquerque.
And sometimes I did in conjunction with someone else. Sorry. Yeah.
Trina.
Like
Do you remember a Trina working under Jono in the CTO?
Trina Jensen.
I wanted to say, was it really Trina Jensen? That's the name that that was coming to mind.
I thought
but
she was at CC actually.
it was a really like small,
No,
blonde.
that's not Trina Jensen. Yeah, Trina was
That's
actually
okay.
CC. I don't remember.
But do you remember Whitney? Do you remember Whitney Gronseth? Does that name ring a bell?
Does she have like kind of medium brown hair?
Yeah, she ended up in the CLO, I think.
Yeah,
She's out
her.
now. She's out now completely.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember her. Actually, so another person that I sort of spoke with was telling me, and I had forgotten about this, but there's a point in time where the recruiters were swiping people from Delphi so much that they actually got banned from showing up at the schools because it started to like they were pulling people out of school and it was pissing the parents off, and legally that's an issue. So they actually got for a while there got banned from showing up at the schools.
I remember that. All these Scientology parents are like, we're not spending $30,000 a year to send our kid to private high school just so that Sea Org recruiters can go up there and recruit them for the Sea Org.
Yeah,
they were
take them
banned
out of
from
school in the
Delphi.
middle of the school day.
Yeah. They would go all the way up to Delphi, Oregon, not just Delphi, LA.
Yeah. Yep.
They
Delphi, Oregon,
would send people
Delphi,
down to
SAC. Huh?
They would send recruiters down to Mexico just to sign up people for the Sea Org by like the dozens.
Oh, that's
But
weird.
that was juicing. That was just juicing the stats because all they would get was signed Sea Org contracts and then giant impossible project prepares just to juice all the HCO substats. That was courtesy of Monet Pearson. That was Monet and Russell's magic. Who ended up married? Monet and Russell are married.
I saw that at some point. I saw that. Yeah. Monet's a whole nother cup there. Anyways.
Yeah.
About that, but yeah, she got herself in a little bit of trouble there. But yeah, I don't know. I actually I was trying to have the Code of a Sea Org member and that big league sales book ready for this whole thing because even the Code of a Sea Org member and that billion-year contract, because we had to commit to the code every year on Sea Org Day and stuff like that. And
right.
it really goes into all the things that the Sea Org the Sea Org considers its members to be sort of responsible for. And I thought what was interesting, because I'd forgotten about it, was the one, where it says, I promise to increase the power of the Sea Org and decrease the power of any enemy. Yes. And I just thought about that because of you get into the whole fair gaming thing, or even just the attacking back, and that was in the code. So if you're called to kind of do that, then you salute and do it.
That's right. I forgot all about the Code of a Sea Org member. Let me just look it up and see if it's online. I'm sure it has to be, of course, but Code of a Sea Org.
Oh yeah,
that
to help get ethics in on this planet and the universe, which is the basic purpose of the Sea Org.
Are you just doing that from memory, or do you have it in front of you?
No, that's just the one I do remember. I don't remember them all. I don't remember.
Oh, Scribed wants me to log in and everything. No, thank you. But let me see. I can find it somewhere else. Code of a Sea Org member.
And we would remember stand up and you have to raise your right hand and recite them. And originally, back in the day, every time we did that, we actually had to sign the bottom of it and turn it in. They stopped having us do that, but through I think somewhere in the 90s, we were still doing that. Like so, we'd do the swearing thing, and then we would sign it as like a new commitment, sort of to the code.
Wow. Well, it says here on 17 of Code of a Sea Org member, I promise through my actions to increase the power of the Sea Org and decrease the power of any enemy.
Yeah.
Why is it that that's the only excerpt I can find? Give me a second here.
I don't know. Did you just type in Code of a Sea Org member?
Yeah. And it just came up with a blog post that literally is just about that one. Damn
Weird,
it.
okay.
I thought that would be easier to find, but maybe I'll do a whole separate video just about Code of a Sea Org member.
Yeah, maybe you should. Maybe that, and like how funky it is that like that we used to wear like actual like sea uniforms, like Navy uniforms and stuff. I have a story about that. So
Go ahead,
embarrassing. Did I tell you about the?
Is this the one when someone asked you what branch you were with?
Yeah. Oh my God. It was so humiliating. So embarrassing. Like I was looking at them as they're walking down. I was like, why are we wearing the same clothes?
You know, you mentioned before about the Scientology's CDEI scale or DEI scale or CDEI scale, the scale of interest. And I think for the recruitment, they don't worry about the CDEI they just do the DEI. So desire, enforce, inhibit. And that the scale inverts and everything. And that when someone is basically saying no, the loudest and the strongest, that's when they're closest to saying yes. Has some sinister implications there, doesn't it?
It's crazy. Like it's literally like I don't know, it just is like harassment, you know what I mean? And but they make you feel like if you don't get them through that part, you are not caring enough about them to get them through it. That's what we're told.
That's right. That's right. And I will say this, that for you Grant Cardone fans out there who know the interview that he had with Jordan Belfort, where Grant Cardone kept saying, no interest is a level of interest. This is what he meant, but was unable to actually describe. Is that someone saying, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Scientology has taught you, oh, that's when they're the closest to saying yes. Just keep going. You have to care enough about them to persist through all of their unpleasantness and to persist because that's when you've got them closest. You can get that close. That's what Grant was kind of trying to say without really being able to say it.
Yeah, pretty much. I did see that interview. It was really, it was so hard to watch. It was rough, really rough. But yeah, Grant doesn't know his technology very well.
No means no is a phrase that will get you declared in Scientology, because in Scientology, no means, well, you're almost ready to say yes.
You're this close. Keep going. Well, because they also use the thing for the definition of hard sell is to care. Hard sell means insistence that people buy. It means caring about the person and not being reasonable about stops and barriers, but caring enough to get them through the stops and barriers to get the service that's going to rehabilitate them. How did I just remember that?
Dipped back into the well. Okay, I've started a bunch of comments. Let's just go through some of these. A cat named M. Do they not see the irony of being afraid of surveillance when their buildings are covered in spy cameras?
Inside and out, both.
Case Ventura says, oh my God, I remember the chip talk. Scientologists are obsessed with getting microchipped, or that we're all going to be microchipped.
Hi, Case Ventura.
Blow Drill says there's a policy about spectating that gets used for recruiting people. Yeah, you remember the policy about like spectators?
Being spectators. It's true. I forgot about that.
Tom Cruise mentioned this in his famous black turtleneck crazy video, where he's like, you're either on the field. We don't know. I've canceled spectatorism in my vicinity. You're either on the field or you're out of the stadium or something like that. And he was spectatorism is a dirty, filthy word in Scientology.
if you're a like spectator, you get kind of classed as that. Like you're kind of like trash. You're like up there with the degraded beings, basically.
Yes. Oh, Adam the Angler says, I'm poor. Can someone mention come on dissemination, please? I think he's making reference to not being able to do a super chat or something.
No, there's
So
a reference called "Come on Dissemination."
that's what he's talking about. He's saying
Oh,
someone mentioned come on dissemination. Okay, so what is come on dissemination? Oh, it sounds a little filthy.
I know.
What is come on dissemination, and what does it mean to you, Jenny?
That would be for like a live session after dark.
Dianetics after dark. Come on dissemination. Okay, so what's the emphasis or what's the essentials of come on dissemination?
Honestly, I don't remember. I remember the name of it. I just don't remember what's in it. It is one of the main thing that regis and recruiters are trained on, though. So I should remember it, but I just don't.
Yes, come on dissemination. Yeah, all right. Well, okay, nothing on that then. Okay, Kay's in the house says Rob McClay, Karen Sue's husband, was a predator recruiter for Celebrity Center International. I wasn't his only victim. When it says Karen Sue's husband, did you know Rob McClay? Because I don't know this person.
I don't know that name either. I mean, I was going to say earlier, like one of the other big recruiters was Jimmy Page from AO. Remember him?
Right. Yes, I remember Jimmy because he was married to Amber.
One of them kind of like little suave kind of guys, you know, flirting with the girls. Like he was also in on that whole thing.
That's right. I forgot about Jimmy. I forget whatever happened to him. Okay, let's see.
He's still in the Sea Org somewhere.
Wow. It just kills me to think that these people are still there almost 20 years after I left. I still think of them as, you know, I mean, a lot of them, I last saw them in 2006. That's 18 years ago, right? Oh, wait, 2006, 16, 26. Yeah, 18 years ago, right? It's just unbelievable to me that some of these guys are still there. Escaping Falcon's Maze says this hits really different after hearing Louis Repetto's talk about how people in Scientology had their beliefs controlled. Yeah, it really is all about controlling belief. Emma Robson says, is it clearing the people or infiltration of and control of governments the goal? Is clearing people the goal, or is infiltration and control of governments the goal?
I mean, like it's supposed to be clearing people, like getting people up the bridge is supposed to be the driving force of Scientology and the Sea Org. And the Sea Org is just supposed to get ethics in, which, you know, depending on who you are, would include getting rid of the people controlling the government, specifically, or not specific, but especially the psychiatrists and all their tools like drugs and stuff, pharmaceuticals, whatever.
Blake Reed says, I'm more inclined to believe the Matrix is real than Scientology. I want my cool black clothes and superpowers, please. When the Matrix came out, it was kind of a big deal in Scientology. I mean, do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, aside from Scientology, I actually love that movie, but it got used so much in recruitment, and yeah, they would completely. It was like the ultimate analogy to what the Sea Org was trying to do. That was how it was always used.
KDK7 says, it's like Tom Cruise said, Scientologists are the only ones who can help.
Do you remember, Aaron, were you there when they were like telling us how Tom Cruise was like higher than us, kind of, and we better call him sir and Mr. and whatever?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was one of the absolute worst events ever. And then following that, they would try to get us to. You did?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, a lot of what kept me in, for the most part, was, even though I could see that, you know, the day-to-day experience and the day-to-day reality of being a Sea Org member in Los Angeles was pretty ridiculous and pretty unproductive and not really getting anywhere, I still believed in like the big broad goal. And I still believe that David Miscavige and Tom Cruise were pushing that goal forward. So any disaffection I picked up from being in the Sea Org in LA was just disaffection with the Sea Org members in LA. None of it made me question Miscavige or Scientology in any way whatsoever. And I considered myself Team Miscavige for sure. And so when Miscavige is getting up there calling Tom Cruise the most dedicated Scientologist in the world, and when Tom Cruise is getting up there saying, you know, we're going to clean up this mess, we like acting like he and Dave are like, you know, a tag team duo, I was like, oh yeah. Like I loved every piece of it.
I would happily
and also
went
a lot
and
of
took a
people
nap for the 3 hours I spent there.
What's that?
So I would happily traded sitting there for 3 hours for a good nap. I hated that event.
Yeah.
But
So
then
what
again,
did you
I did
think
hate
about him
most.
saying, what did you think about that video that Tom did?
I thought it was just a bit fanatical, honestly. I was just like, take it back a notch. I mean, come eat the shit I eat. Come work 20 hours out of the 24 hours a day for 7 days of the week and tell me that you're as dedicated as I am. I dare you. That's how I felt about it.
I remember not having any critical thoughts about the video, but I do remember when he's like, I wish I could romp. I'd like to take a vacation. I do remember thinking to myself, I do remember thinking, I'm pretty fucking sure you take vacations, bro. I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah. And your 50,000 thread count, like beautiful sheet set on your probably $15,000 bed with your private jet, you know, shut up. It was just a bit much. It was a bit overboard. That's what I meant by fanatical. It was just like, it's just, I don't know. Let's like stop exaggerating. You do talk
like, pump
about
the
it a
brakes a
lot,
little
but
bit
that
there.
doesn't mean that you're effective.
That's right. And the truth is, he had only just started talking about it.
Yeah,
he spent most of his
like
career
that
as a
year.
Scientologist not talking about it.
I know. I was like, okay. And it's one thing to talk about it. It's another to actually physically get people in. I probably, because I even got people into Scientology. I should feel bad for that. Like I literally brand new people got them started on course. I probably got more than he did, honestly.
Yeah. I remember he said, so are we going to clean up this mess? Because we need your help. I was like, oh, he said we. That's nice.
You're like, I'm we.
Kim Blue says, oh my God, can you imagine being the dude at Hertz rental car cleaning out the car? Yeah. Looking through these auditing files. They pretty much just threw those files straight into the trash can.
Probably.
Lydia Von Stretchclaw says, well, he owes you for that one, Aaron. He just doesn't know it. Yeah, Steve Latino owes us. Thanks to him, his PC folders do not exist, which as a Scientologist, yeah, it's kind of horrifying. But as someone who's probably out of Scientology now, is probably quite a relief to him. Adam Carmona, Steve Latino is the luckiest man in Scientology. That's right. This is Louis Repetto. Parents get RB'd if they don't let their kids get recruited.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know they were getting pulled into ethics.
Yeah, they would get RB'd in ethics. Now, RB stands for rollback, and it's a procedure in Scientology to find out where is it that you got this bad idea from. And it's hardly a procedure. They literally just ask you where you got the idea from.
Yeah, and they trace it back. It's like it's supposed to be an enemy line, which means it came from an enemy, which is a suppressive, and you're trying to pull it back.
Yeah. And Laura Bensinger said, Sea Org days? There's one Sea Org day. It's August 12th. It's supposed to be the celebration of the anniversary of the creation of the Sea Org.
You know, by the time I left, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, by the time I left, they weren't even, you know how we used to have the day after where we got to go to the beach or whatever? By the time I left, they were just doing a ceremony and back to post.
Yeah. Yeah, even here at Flag, they sort of my understanding is they stagger it over many days where they'll just let each shift have like a few hours off this day, and then another shift have a few hours off the next day, and then another shift have a few hours off the next day. Um, when you were in the Sea Org, was Sea Org Day something you looked forward to?
Originally, yeah, because we would have the ceremony usually the night before, and then we would go the next day, and we would like be at a beach or a park or something, and there'd be activities and food, and just it was a whole day of just fun. At the end of the night, they would have a big dinner and dancing, and it was just like a big day of party. And so we used to love it. It was just like a guaranteed day off, kind of, because you didn't get a lot of them. And then, yeah, by the time it was just getting less and less, and then by the time I left, they pretty much you just do the ceremony, and then you just go back to post, and you didn't get the day.
I remember you and I talked about this in our last chat, but I always just assume no one's ever seen anything you've done before. The idea that I talked about that there's only a few key big things I believed in Scientology that sort of kept me in and kept me involved and working, even though I didn't really want to be there. I feel like for many Scientologists, the propaganda they're fed that Scientology is actually succeeding in their mission. They're actually expanding, gaining greater influence in governments and whatever, that there's millions and millions of Scientologists, that organizations are expanding everywhere. I feel like some of the people to whom it should be most obvious that is not true are the fundraisers and the recruiters, because they are the ones who have the most direct interface with the public. They are those posts, like the more prospects you have to recruit or sell, the easier your life is as a fundraiser or a recruiter. And yet
Right.
life as a recruiter or a fundraiser for Scientology is pure unmitigated hell. And it seems like no one has a better visibility into the scarcity of just how many Scientologists there are than fundraisers and recruiters. And so I guess what I'm asking you is, in all your years spent recruiting or being on personnel lines, did you ever struggle with that? Like, wait a second, I thought Miscavige CLB keeps telling us how much we're expanding and expanding and expanding, and yet there's no new people to recruit. It's like there's no giant well of people to join staff. There's no giant well of staff to replace and move up to the Sea Org. It's bare bones. It's always bare bones. Everywhere it's bare bones. Did you ever struggle with that, or was it something that was apparent to you?
So it was not apparent to me until I started going to the orgs to recruit, which was in my final few years, final couple, three, I don't even remember. Everything was a blur. So my final years, when I actually started going to the orgs, was when it started to like, where are the people? And at first I even make excuses for it. I'm like, oh, I arrived in the middle of the week, so it's probably just, everyone's working or something, the weekend will be better. And then it was just like, I don't know, like, yeah, depending on which org you went to. So, like, like, for example, go to Boston, it's a bigger org, or go to DC, and it's a bigger org. But, so then they'd have like 30 people on the weekend. And so it was kind of like, oh, well, I guess this is okay. I don't know. It wasn't great. But then when I would move off to some of these other, orgs that are smaller, like I think I did tell you about the Kansas City one,
Mm.
and in Albuquerque, and I wish I could remember some of the other orgs I went to. Like I went to Montreal, Vancouver. Even Vancouver shocked
Oh.
me. Like when I went there, I was kind of, where is everybody? Kind of, does it get better at night? Is there going to be more people? Like, kind of, where is everyone? And like sometimes I even went to some of the orgs in the Bay Area, and the same thing. It's just real spotty. Like when I went to I want to say Santa Barbara org, and then I went to the Buenaventura mission, and that mission had more public than Santa Barbara org had, and it just was so funky and weird. And I was kind of, yeah. And then you listen to these events and you hear about all the expansion. Obviously, the first one that rung a bell for me was when they were talking about these people coming into Kansas City in droves, and like, or something about their super packed course room or something. I forget what it was. And I remember thinking, well, I mean, I was just there and the doors were locked. And then 3 people showed up at the end of the day, you know, kind of. Actually, it was the first time of all of the places I had gone to do recruitment. That was the first time I asked to just leave. I said, just let's cancel this and send me back. There is nobody here.
Kansas City?
At the time when I went, it was dead, like super dead.
Wow. Wow.
And I stayed
Do
3
you remember
days.
do you remember Dan O'Connor being one of the key executives when you were there?
Yeah, I met him briefly. So like I wouldn't even be able to recognize him today. I met him and Liz Carr. Does that name sound familiar? Was she the ED or something? She was
Something like
pretty
that.
nice. I think she felt pretty bad that when we showed up, there was no one there.
Did Dan by any chance try to choke you out or hit you with a fax machine?
He did not.
Marked safe. Consider
Probably
yourself
wasn't
lucky.
there long enough.
He must have been in
No,
a good
but he
mood
was,
that day.
you know, like when you meet certain people and you're just kind of like, oh boy, he's a tool. You know what I mean? That was my first thing. I was like, I don't need to work with that guy. It was like the first time I ever met Grant Cardone. I was like, whew, we do not need to have another conversation like ever. It was like CC Public at that time. I was kind of like, I'm just perfectly fine with never having to talk to you again.
I thought for sure this was going to be a 20-minute conversation. We've been going for nearly 2 hours now. How about that?
Yeah, I was thinking it's going to be a 30-minute thing too.
Yeah. For anyone not yet subscribed to Jenny's YouTube channel, you can find her at Cults and Atheists, a search for knowledge and healing. Yeah, this has been fun. Let's do more chats like these. Anything that you think of. And it doesn't have to be 2 hours. We can do 20 minutes, but 2 hours is fun too.
Yeah, it flew by. I didn't even notice.
All right, everyone. What is today? Saturday. I think I do definitely have at least one more video I'm going to try to get in today. So check that subscription button. Check that notification bell. Don't forget to like the video, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to Jenny's channel. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, oh, Nancy, my love, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right